The next panel will be focused on some organizational and institutional issues. And the reason why we choose this topic was that when we are working in our academy in many of the countries, they are permanently arising the questions who is responsible, how the management is, and its continuation with Ivar's topic was focusing on how central or how decentral things are and should be. I was in charge of e-government organization development in Estonia several years, so I remember all those stories starting from who is responsible, how to cooperate with the municipality. So it's always on some of the important questions. And just for launching this discussion, I have few thoughts simply. What we see in most of the countries is that we see very strong political will usually. In most of the countries, we see that presidents or prime ministers are saying that, yes, we would like to have electronic government. And many countries have also like a technical capacity to do it. So companies can do, it's not a question that to have good ideas, what are good services, or it's basically the companies can solve the problem of technology. But the tricky question is always that how to get from this strong political will and good ideas to practical implementation. And now coming into the place also financing. Usually the financing is very much determining the strategy. We see also in the last panel we had discussion about international finance projects, and then we heard also that if the finances are focused on some certain services and certain systems, and at the end you can find like spaghetti. Sometimes we say that spaghetti effect. We don't understand how the systems are talking with each other, and somebody should be responsible. And in this story, if we are reaching already to this situation, then it's very difficult to manage those processes. So this is some aspects what I would like to raise here also, how to manage, who is responsible, and how to cooperate. And now next phase, what we see also in several countries, where from one side you can think about e-government like a technology or infrastructure. And several cases we see that the Minister of Infrastructure is in charge of e-government. And it's one possibility, and it's quite good example also. From some other countries, it's considered that this e-government is something about economy and efficiency, and then Minister of Economy is in place, or Minister of Finance. And Minister of Finance, of course, because they have money and they can coordinate more easily. So it's to this type of options. Then third question arises that, of course, e-government is very much dealing with reforms. Public administration reforms, you can't make automatization of poor processes, and so somebody should rule this reform processes. And quite often these reforms are of duty of prime minister or some countries' presidents. Or some separate reformed ministry. This again, one more interesting option. Then, third question arises that we have also municipalities. So people are getting most of the services from municipal level. And how to deal with municipalities where central government usually is not directly controlling what municipalities are doing. So this is one more additional aspect in this story. So just finalizing my small short speech is that what we found that quite often we see also competition. We see several countries, also in Eastern Partnership field, where 2 or even 3 ministries are in competition. We just asking that who is responsible on interoperability, then it's not very clear who is doing it. And then how to manage with these reforms also in parallel. So this picture seems to be much more fuzzy, and it has been also permanent discussion in many countries how to do it. We faced in several countries a situation where the the leadership was changed during the last 10 years, and they are starting again with the policy and implementation discussions, and this is one question. And then last small item, in several countries we have kind of political advisors, the prime minister or some ministers. And then it's again question that is this e-government close to policy, or is it neutral? Or should we just think about some political advices to the prime minister, or is it true or not? This is a question quite often. So, and this was the reason why just we chose also this like very much institutional and organizational question to discuss a little bit more. And I remember from the years of ICA, International Council for IT and Public Administration, that this discussion had been already a long time. And for example, in Singapore, the main ministry was at least Minister of Culture and good arts or something. So you can just figure out the different places where you can manage those government issues. And of course, in public sector in general, it's two ways for coordination. One is to use money, and second is to use law or power of law. Okay, this was my introduction, and that I was just dealing with those issues in Estonia many years, and then we will be happy to listen your opinions and comments. We have 5 excellent panelists. Starting from left, Elmir. He's Deputy Minister for Communication and High Technologies in Azerbaijan. I think that you have permanent experience from these stories already, and especially focused also on a little bit closer to politics sometimes, or maybe not. And we'll just give first a word for you, just to explain a little bit what's your opinion on that, but also what's the situation in Azerbaijan, and maybe what's the challenges.
Okay.
Etc. Please.
Thank you, Arva. Firstly, I want to express our thanks to organizer for inviting Azerbaijan delegation to this event. I want to mention it. We have largest delegation in here. More than 20 persons come to Tallinn, and this delegation consists from representatives from government, civil society, and private companies. I think this combination show our approach to the development e-government in our country. I am on this field more than 20 years, about 25, and all development of ICT and including e-government, I was evident on this process. I was involved with this process, and therefore I want to say something about this process. If we will look the philosophy of this process, and mostly when we study the international experience, this is mostly, if we will look European practice and maybe Asian and the American practice, mostly this is the government leading process where government bodies had leading and drive forces, and this process sometimes depended of firstly political wills which exist in country, secondly depended on structure of government. You mentioned about different models which exist in different countries, and first, this is dependent of conditions which exist in countries. I want to mention Azerbaijan started this process from 2003 year when, as leading countries in the world, we adopted a national strategy for the development ICT, name it such way, but this document was first document where was indicated Azerbaijan declared transition to the information society, and the one of main directions of this development was appointed e-government. First time in South Caucasus, in our region, Azerbaijan declared such political wills, and after that we go on this process. We started formation e-government in Azerbaijan, and Ministry of Communication and Information Technologies, which was established in 2004 year, after 1 year after adopting this national strategy, was appointed as coordinator of this national strategy and other state programs which adopted for the realization this this national strategy. And Azerbaijan chose model when government structures lead this process, but we invite to this process all stakeholders in our country, including private sector and the civil sector too. To this process, we invited, and additionally, the international organizations such UNDP, World Bank. During this term, this structure was our biggest partners on development e-government, and we established a very close relation with worldwide vendors. All worldwide vendors was involved in this process. For example, we established PKI infrastructure with Microsoft, and we cooperate with other companies in realization different projects. And this is show our openness to the realization. Government coordinate this process, but this is full open process. And in formation this our policy, we study international best practice which exists in the world. Mainly we directed to the European practice, but we studied the other different practice which exists in the world. I want to mention some we implemented in our country some different projects, some countries. For example, e-audit system, we learn from Holland and try implement in Azerbaijan. We study practice on implementation of PKI with Latvia. We study Estonian practice on X-Road, on organizing exchange information between government bodies and other. We are fully open for such cooperation, and therefore we are thinking the Azerbaijan experience today can be play as model for the different countries. This process driven by our ministry, which communication and today named as communication high technologies, but to this process involved all companies or all government bodies, and therefore our president give high attention to the development of e-governance in Azerbaijan. I won't mention the other aspect of this. When we started to develop our action plan on e-government, this action plan was planned on the state program for the elimination of poverty in Azerbaijan, on the chapter increasing efficiency and transparency of government e-governance in Azerbaijan. And this is shown. In Azerbaijan, the e-governance considered as part of global policy for the development, which included such aspects as elimination of poverty in Azerbaijan, anti-corruption, increasing efficiency, and others. And therefore, I am thinking the government bodies, according to the topic of these discussions, can and must orchestrate this process and play the main role with other stakeholders which involved to this process. In future, I will very widely describe our practice. Thank you.
Can I ask also a small question immediately? What's the mechanism? How are you cooperating with municipalities? It's always just a little bit more complicated issue because municipalities are small, but from other side they need to offer services. Do you have some mechanism how to engage like a development, a joint development with municipalities as well?
Yeah. As you know, municipality, this is bodies which elected in all countries. the same situation in Azerbaijan. We have about maybe a little bit more 2,000 municipalities on the villages level, on the regional level, and the city level. According to the law of access to information, all municipalities must have own websites and establish own information system which serving to the citizens. Unfortunately, sometimes, especially on the villages level, on settlement level, the municipality haven't such possibility technical aspect and mostly not only technically and the human potential for this. And therefore we established very close relations with association of these municipalities. Through this association, we provide consultancy for him, we provide technical assistance, and now we're thinking about establish maybe cloud technology for our municipalities when all these bodies can involve with the process, e-governance, and will use the same conditions which exist for the central executive bodies and other. We started this process from level of central executive body. Now we're going to the level of local executive bodies, which will include the municipalities too. And we consider it the whole picture for all levels structures.
Thank you. And now I'm just planning to give the floor to Frank Lehmann. Frank is from Belgium. And here's he's ICT and a government ambassador. But I know also, Frank, that he was working in ICA, International Council for IT and Public Administration, where actually in Estonia I was starting in 1993, and we joined this organization, and we learned a lot. And we learned a lot about the management and coordination and policies and many other things. So I think that you can have comments from both sides, also from Belgium and from ICA countries. We are just a lot of, I think, 20 or 25 countries now, or even more.
Goes up and down.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So indeed, I will have two heads today. So I will talk a little bit about Belgium and then give you some feedback of what our member states from ICA have to say about this topic. First about Belgium. Well, Belgium is also a very small country. 11 million inhabitants. If you start from Brussels and drive in any direction for more than an hour, you're already in another country. But politically, it's one of the most complex countries I think you can have. It's a little nightmare for those who have to implement ICT. The reason is that it's a federated country, so you have a national level, but you also have regions, you have communities, you have provinces, you have municipalities, and all the powers have been spread all over these entities. So every entity can develop whatever they want for those things they are responsible for. So, and very soon you see that these entities go in different directions, which very rapidly makes it difficult to control. So I work for the Ministry for ICT, which is a horizontal ministry. So we are a cross-ministry. We build services for all our ministries, but I have no power to impose it on them. So they are my customers. I need to make sure that the services I build are good enough, safe enough, secure enough, cheap enough, so that they are convinced to use it. So we really have a customer-supplier relationship between colleagues. Now, knowing that all these entities go in different directions and that we only have 11 million inhabitants, we immediately understood that we needed to agree on certain rules of the game so that for that citizen and that industry, it does not become a chaos from the start. So, and that was, I think, probably the most clever moment we had in history. That is that we all agreed to make a real distinction between what's happening in the front office and what's happening in the back office. We agreed that in order for these entities to be able to do whatever they want and to build the services they think they should build on the front office side, we all agreed to have one common back office. with one common set of rules of the game on how to use private data, how to authenticate the citizen, how to authenticate a company, etc. And that, I think, saved us and made our life very easy. So our ministry is in charge of building, maintaining, and securing the whole back office infrastructure. We work completely backstage. We don't look for visibility as a ministry. You can ask the Belgian ambassador in your country and ask him whether he knows FEDICT, because FEDICT is the name of our ministry, and he will say, FEDICT, what's FEDICT? Although it's one of his ministries. So again, it's done on purpose. We built an infrastructure so that the ministries can do their job in the best possible ways. And even further, that the citizen or the companies for whom they build these services can do their job in the best possible conditions. And we are really focused on that. So yeah, we had to come up with a number of rules of the game. One of them being that all the databases that are being built in any ministry, we never copy them. So they are all authentic sources. So that allows us, well, to say that you always have the right data because there is only one database. So by definition, it's always correct. Where we were very attentive to was organize strict rules on who has access to these databases, for which particular purpose, etc. So that's where we secure and we create the trust at the same time by securing these data. What we also decided not to do was, as a Ministry of ICT, was to build applications. But on the contrary, to build tools, developer kits, anything, modules, so that those who want to build applications in combination with the electronic identity card or whatever can do that in the best possible way. So we make a real split between making supporting tools and an infrastructure and empowering those who want to build end-user applications. Those applications, we give that almost 100% to the private sector. Yeah. Of course, we want our market and our industry to work, and very closely. We are not in a culture of public-private partnerships, although de facto we do a lot with the industry. And then since last year, we have what we call a FEDICT law. That's a law that officializes the role that we play as Ministry of ICT and actually gives us the one and only authority to make connections in the back office to one or more databases. So that excludes potential misuse and allows us to better manage what's happening in the back office. And then since this year, we have a new minister, and the minister is the Minister of the Digital Agenda. So we're part of Europe. The whole Europe, all the European countries are moving with their noses in the same direction and to create the European single market. In practice, that means that we all have a list of actions to implement. I think it's 101 actions altogether. Well, we have a dedicated minister, and my minister is in charge of that. And as a consequence, of course, I get, well, politically, there is much more attention to what we realize and what we can progress probably much faster than what was the situation before. A little word about ICA. So I sent out a survey to my members asking to give us some feedback on how they were functioning. Okay, as I have members all over the world, it was very difficult to make one common denominator, but you could say that most of them have either a ministry, and most of the time it's a horizontal ministry, or in some cases it's an agency. Agencies tend to be a bit more flexible than a ministry. And they, most of the time, build supporting actions, tools, services. They define the e-government strategy. They give advice or recommendations on standards and on protocols and on security. They take care of a lot of cybersecurity. I think there is nothing really special that popped out that was not what the majority of them was doing. Depending on in which context you are, they have much more budget, they are much more advanced with technology and not so there you have all the flavors available. But in general, horizontal ministry, giving support to other ministries and then with the purpose of boosting the economy, the industry and the citizens.
Thank you. It seems that also Belgium is a little bit similar to Estonia, but in some places are also differences. And maybe I have one more question to you. We had the discussion in several countries many times that in principle you have a role for setting up a strategy and policy and setting up some rules. Sometimes it's architecture or something. And then some organization on behalf of government is running some of the central things. How it's divided in Belgium? Do you have also two separate issues, or it's one single like environment?
Well, the fact that we have such a complex political situation, we are condemned to coordinate, talk to each other, and always work by consensus. So I have two platforms that assist me in taking my decisions. One is a group that represents all the CIOs of the ministries. There we talk technically, bits and bytes, standards, etc. And then I have a group that are representatives of the regions and the communities, where we talk more program on the front office side. And these are my two echo boards to where I listen to, and we take decisions by consensus. I'm just the facilitator there. I will never be the primus inter pares or be above that. We are all at the same level. I'm just there, again, to help them make their job better. So, yeah, that's the groups I listen to, and we take decisions there.
My question was a little bit motivated to this fact that in some places we found that if the policy planning and implementation are in the same unit, like big center, then after some years it appears that the policy, they are making their own policy and growing and growing and growing. And after some 10 or 20 years, it appears that the situation is not manageable anymore. And then they are divided. It was slightly happening maybe in Sweden or not, maybe I'm a mistake, but then some discussions are always ongoing that to look to this policy and strategy level, just setting up some rules and things and laws and maybe budgets. And second is to run this metadata and interoperability framework, some of the components and those things. So it's like has been like interesting discussion in several countries to look on those issues. But thank you. Yeah, or if you have some comments.
Just one last thing. Yeah. We made a clear distinction and split. Right. Yeah. Every ministry can make his own strategy on the front office side. They can do whatever they want. In the back office, we have a joint agreement, and we translate that with a collaboration agreement, which is a politically loaded negotiation of what we will build as infrastructure on that, with a budget that goes with it. So we make a clear distinction between the technology and the programs that they will do.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we will just have great chance to listen opinion from private sector. And as usually we are, especially when talking about databases and IT systems, Oracle is a big player. Also, Oracle is very much working together with governments. And many countries or special fields is, of course, a financing information system. Every country we are working with sees that Oracle is doing some finance-related IT systems. But maybe just also would be very good to listen some opinion what private sector expect from government side, and what about ownership and how the models of private-public partnership. And then just I will give now floor to Peter Fuses, who is here the public sector of region for Oracle have also very long experience with cooperation with the different countries. And then I would now just encourage to say out what the private sector expectations are and what the problems you see and what you saw in your practice, what the different countries are doing, please.
Thank you. So in my job, I work with, we cover more than 100 countries. So I have a pleasure to work with a lot of government, and I met some of you already and visited most of the countries, I think, which are represented here. And my experience is that for the developing countries, and probably it's a little bit different from Belgium and the more developed Western European countries. So for the developing countries, I see that the ICT is being deployed successfully in places where there is a strong central agency who owns the e-government strategy. Now, I say agency. It can be Ministry of ICT. It can be a part of Ministry of Economics, can be a part of the presidential administration, can be part of the Prime Minister's office. It depends on the country setup. But there must be an agency or ministry who is strong and who can enforce policies across the government. If it's a weak agency, then no one is going to listen to them. Now, I agree what was said earlier and the morning session as well, that very often this agency does not own the projects and they do not own the budget. So if the tax authority has a tax modernization project, that's a project for tax authority. If it's a social security project, that's a different administration. But that agency must make sure that those systems are interoperable and are in line with the overall country ICT strategy or e-government strategy. That's very important. Otherwise, there will be projects here and there which may work, in a siloed system, may work as islands, but we are not going to be interoperable. So this is what I've seen, that in countries where it's strong, then it works very well. In countries when that it's really distributed, then it doesn't work that well. And there are a lot of challenges later on with integration of different systems. Obviously, for us as vendors, it's easier to work with a centralized power, but probably this conference is not about what's good for us. Obviously, it's what's good for the other side. So that's why I'm not approaching the problem from the vendor point of view, but sharing the experience from the success point of view. I know it's easy to say, but sometimes it's part of the political battle, and it's not easy to take authority from one ministry and other ministry and force them to use, something central. But let me just give you an example which worked out well. It's from Greece. Now, you all know that Greece went through, and is still going through a very difficult financial situation. And public procurement of different goods and services were absolutely distributed to ministries for years. Now, maybe that was part of the situation that was created in Greece. And I know from our history, from Oracle history, we were talking with the Greek government for years about a centralized e-procurement system. When they buy goods and, ministries combine the purchases of A4 papers, whatever, and they get the best price, and then each ministry is just using that. But due to the political battles, it just didn't happen. Up until the point when the so-called Troika, you may remember 2 years ago, it was a lot in the news, so it's World Bank, IMF, and EU together pushed Greece that said, look, you must do something with public procurement. Because, for example, for the healthcare items, buying for the government health system, goods, you are buying it 50% more than the EU average. It cannot stand like this. So it was not internally strong enough institution who pushed it through. It was an external one, but finally happened. Finally, every ministry had to give in and said, okay, we will accept the central procurement system. They implemented in roughly a year. It costs something like between $5 and $10 million, adding up all the external purchases and internal investment. And in the first year, which was last year, the saving at government level is estimated €1.5 billion. Okay, so 10 they spent on last year 10 million, saved 1.5 billion. Now, it couldn't have happened without a strong push. This time was an external push from the Troika, but some other countries which are more successful in rolling out IT, there is an internal push. It's again the Prime Minister's office, the presidential administration, the IT site ICT agency. And then it works very well. From another example, from a vendor point of view, 2010, a new government came on board in Hungary. They came to us and to other vendors as well, saying that we believe we are spending way too much on you, Oracle, and we want to cut back on the spending on Oracle. We want to buy your goods, your software in the future, but you have to give us a much better price. And we said, well, sure, but why don't you collect all the purchases? Because instead of selling to that ministry and that agency and that ministry and that agency, if you collect, we can give you a much better price. It was not easy, because then what the government did, they said, look, dear ministries, I'm collecting your money, actually, reducing your budget, but with the amount that you would buy from Oracle, and I'm buying centrally, and I can buy more. And we could end up in a much better deal for the government, so much better financing, pricing conditions, etc., than it was before. And then the government also said, look, then from now on, you have to commit that you will give the same price for the future purchases. And we said, sure, yes, but please collect those purchases, and then we give the same price. So there are good examples, what I see, when there is a strong hand who collecting orders, who collecting, making sure that things are going in harmony, versus just every ministry does their own thing. One more thing to add, nowadays what we see is the infrastructure is being consolidated in many countries. They build something like a government cloud, so it's not a public cloud, it's a government-owned system. But they say, look, we should not have a data center for each ministry and each agency. We should just have, let's say, 2 or 3. Ministry of Defense always out of this discussion, because defense is a special thing, and of course the intelligence agencies have their own separate system. But all the rest, there is no reason why they run separate data systems which cost much more money, more difficult to manage, etc. So what we all, again, centralization is that have as less data center as possible in the country, more professional and run, and all the systems can be run on those systems. We see a lot of savings, what's happening nowadays. Again, that requires a strong coordination. So briefly from...
Yep, thank you. And I would also add a bit, our academy is not a vendor, actually. We are not business sector, but I think that you agree with me as well that we both are happy if the partners are very clear who is owning things, and we would like to see results. Of course, business is business also, but then it's always much more easier just to have very clear partners. And then I have maybe some connected question, maybe a little bit not so easy to answer, but then what's your opinion? We saw in some places where is it ownership and budget, if it's just the same hands, is it good? Because we see some situations that owners are some government institutions, but budgets are coming from international aid programs. In some countries, we have a budget and ownership in the same. So if they are saying that you should do this one, and they are calculating money, so this is working better. But do you have some similar situations sometimes?
Both can work well. So it's again, are the standards are clear? What the country will follow? Because there can be, again, as I said, if a taxation modernization project, the ownership should be with the tax authority. Now, but an external agency can say, look, those are the standards you must keep, because those are the, what we run within the government. So both can work well, and there are examples for both.
Yeah, just to simply add that we saw some cases where this legal ownership is clear, but no physical persons will take care.
Okay.
So this is like a complicated situation where it's really just not so easy to work. But it's a comment.
One more thing, just because I don't want to sound a hypocrite. So if there are 5 ministries in a country who would buy $1 million each, it's $5 million to us. If it's the central procurement for 2 million, then it's only 2. So I don't want to look like, but I rather sell 2 and keep a relationship and see successful projects long term than sell 5 and run away. Okay, so I'm not against Oracle, but I think there is a joint interest. We want to make sure whatever we do, as I'm not sure, I'm sure it's not only Oracle, the other vendors as well. Whatever we do, we are not just focusing on short term. We want to make sure that whatever we sell is successfully working for you long term, and then it's a win-win for both of us. Before I sound someone like wants to lose money to Oracle. So.
Okay, thank you very much. And even Hannes, I think, had mentioned that we are not planning to talk too much about Estonia, but we have great possibility now to hear Siim Sikkut. And Siim is ICT Policy Advisor in Government Office. Actually, I was also starting in Estonia as the same office, close to Prime Minister. And Siim has some comments and also some thoughts about Estonian setup and what experiences we had and maybe what challenges we have. Please.
Thank you. And well, before I go to the topic, I guess from the government of Estonia side, well, warm welcome to Estonia for our foreign guests, right? I see lots of, old friends, familiar faces, and some new ones. So the more welcome to e-Estonia, as we call it. Going to today's topic, I guess I'll perhaps make two statements, and then I'll talk about Estonian sort of story a bit. Well, my first two statements on our topic would be that, first of all, as we say, and it's a cliche a bit, but as we say that IT is not a thing in itself, it's a tool, you use to reinvent the government, make your processes better, whatever. I think it's the same sort of thing that, a derivative of this is that IT governance is another thing in itself. I mean, if you look at Belgium, if you look at Azerbaijan, Estonia, whatever, then, whatever you can do in IT governance has to reflect and take into account what is governance mechanism or, setup in the country overall. Is it a federation? Is it not? Is it, very top-down driven government policy making? Is it not? And so forth. And I mean, I'll leave this point hanging. I'll provide it with examples from Estonian case, but this is always what you have to build in. I mean, whatever you do with IT governance, you have to build into general government sort of policy making sort of system and scheme. But second, I would quite like to echo what Peter was saying about you have to have somebody who, really is, the agency or, the unit or the people behind driving it for the whole of government. We were just talking with a friend and colleague over lunch that, somebody has to wake up in the morning and exactly go to work with this idea that, yes, I will now do this thing for the whole of government, right? If you don't have these people and the mandate for them, again, it's very hard to push things forward. And having said all of that, I think from Estonian perspective, yes, Arvo used to work in my office beforehand. I think we are in, you could say, a third iteration or third generation of governance model in a way. Back in the day, 15 years ago, we started very much from, small unit in a government, meaning a prime minister's office, laying the first platforms down, laying the first sort of initiatives down, really driving it forward in a like top-down kind of fashion. But very early on, we made a choice to go decentralized. Exactly, each ministry, each agency has to be responsible for their IT, back office and front office wise. And we still had a unit in a Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications, which was in charge of thinking about the whole of government view. Again, making sure that there are legislation in place, making sure that there are rules and guidelines like interoperability framework in place, making sure that there are platforms being developed for the government to work on jointly, like X-Road or National EAD architecture and so forth. But what happened over the years was that we ran into a bit of trouble, I guess. And that, this trouble had three sort of aspects to that. First of all, yes, decentralized system in a full way works very well because you get lots of ideas and innovation from bottom up. You get services which are technically supposed to be very attuned to user needs because people on the ground should know the best, right? But what happened is that in our case, innovation stifled. We had lots of talk about, is a tiger dead? Is a tiger sleeping? What's happening? Are we innovating fast enough? Are we losing pace as a government? So that was one thing. Secondly, I guess everybody started going a bit into different directions, technologically speaking. So exactly what platforms you're using, but at the same time also, exactly what things to focus on. And it was very hard for, let's say, to pick up some new themes, like open data, for example, a very prime example, I guess. It was not in one individual agency's interest to go to open data, while it might be like a government priority. So, and the third thing what happened was that, still, I mean, you got into a bit of competition, like you rightly mentioned, right? So if every minister is a digital minister, it's a great thing, but still they're competing for the same resources and emphasis, and perhaps there's a duplication that can occur. So that's why, I guess 3 years from now, when again we had elections, and after elections a new government came in, we started doing, let's say, making 4 kind of changes. The first was that we really decided to build up a government CIO office, as it can be called. So yes, we got some people from private sector, some very strong people from private sector in as government CIO and his team, and exactly to take charge of the central unit, right, in one ministry, and making sure that they really can lay sort of technology policy down, that we have a joint strategy. We gave them tools and instruments to really sort of direct everybody in sort of the same kind of manner and direction. And secondly, under this ministry, there is an agency we call Estonian Information Systems Authority. It's RIA, is the Estonian acronym. But we have now trying to really build up RIA as an everyday sort of technical level coordination unit, a competence center, if you wish, for the whole of government. So they run the central technological platforms like X-Road and EID and a few others. They operate as governmental CERT, meaning taking care of our cybersecurity. And the whole idea is that exactly somebody wakes up in the morning and goes to work, but making sure that we all move along, in a sort of one sort of direction on a technological level as well. But third, we started mixing up the model a bit. So we still are fundamentally decentralized. We still are this way that each minister, each agency, ministry is a digital ministry. They have to have an IT strategy for their sector. They have to have the development of their own systems. But we basically my job was created. And so government office entered into the game again, in addition to the government CIO office. And our job was to remain on a very high level of policy, but exactly make sure that this sort of, on a policy level, we talk to each other. And even if each minister, takes care of digital development of their own, that we all move in the same direction, that we have a central so-called e-government strategy in place, and we sort of, push bigger initiatives through in a coordinated manner. And also international collaboration, that we speak with one voice internationally, for example. So basically, we are now in this sort of experimenting with this hybrid model of having one central core government, strong government CIO unit, combined with decentralized fundamental sort of responsibility for IT, and then us in the Prime Minister's office complementing with exactly cross-agency collaboration. It can sound messy, but the thing in Estonia is that the beauty of us is that we are small. So it's, of course, relies a lot about us all knowing each other and talking to each other constantly, and so making it all work like that. But as I say, it's an experimentation. It's something we saw a need for, and I think I hope that we are now starting to see the fruits of this experiment taking place. So yeah, better quality for services, more innovation happening, more big initiatives like e-residency coming to the table again and being pushed through, and etc. And well, the fourth thing that I wanted to mention is that I think coming to perhaps Frank's comments, well, a lot in the past, our focus in coordination had also been a back office, or at least that's what we had the instruments like guidelines, rules, money, and so forth. But now with the new government CIO office, we're also moving more to the front line, and not necessarily building central platforms, but imposing like guidelines, quality standards, service standards, if you wish. So exactly because we saw very sort of different quality of services otherwise, but people expect us to do a good job over the whole of government. So yes, we had to sort of move to the front line really to exactly make sure that people get the same experience all over the board, whatever point of government they come in contact with. So I think that's the Estonia story. We're still, like I say, experimenting with how to make it work, but Frank talked about ICA. I can talk a bit about OECD, which is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Sort of there we see amongst the colleagues, and it's partially overlapping with ICA, but amongst the colleagues there we see that there's quite a lot of thinking about how to have more this high-level policy involvement in the game, sort of, I guess, in the direction that we have been taking. So we still in Estonia don't have a digital agenda minister. For us, a digital agenda minister is the Prime Minister. He's in charge. He has the tools and sort of, the political authority to exactly coordinate the government like that. But still, I can see more and more thinking in all the countries that, okay, how to really pull it off this way, that somebody also from policy, high-level policy view, tries to steer the game.
So president, actually.
Well, president is, in our case, does not have the actual authority, right?
So digital agenda.
Yes. In our case, we are lucky to have a very digital president who really pushes us in thinking, but yes, somebody needs to do the work still. So these would be my comments, I guess.
Thank you very much, and it reminds me that usually moderators should make some stories also. Remember that something more than 10 years ago, one journalist from one newspaper was asking when Estonian government, e-government is ready. what time, when it's finished. And it's like also to comment to Siim's talk is that actually it's an ongoing process all the time. All the time this question is about how central, how decentral, who is responsible, how this process should run, and so on and so forth. Only small question to Siim, and we know that Siim is not a political advisor.
Yes.
But you have been pretty close to politics also, like you see close how politics is working because you're
How the sausage is made.
Yes, organization. What's your opinion? Should we need, not in Estonia, but in general, should we need some political advisor to e-government or not? Or is it enough to have political will? It doesn't matter how it appears.
Well, again, I have to sort of quote from Estonian experiences that, I mean, you know, even, I guess, from my daily job, yes, I'm not political myself, so I'm not affiliated with any party, I'm a civil servant, but still the job you do for the Prime Minister is political in essence. You help them to make politics of digital, you know, government. So what I'm getting to that is that I think if you want to have some top level, exactly high level steering, of course, this kind of advisorship is needed because otherwise politicians, you know, again, they need to know where to go and where to run. So my answer, based on our experience, is a strong yes, but that's also given the needs that we had, right, to make sure that everybody moves in the same sort of direction. If some other countries are in a different spot, have some other needs first, well, it might not be the utmost priority, but you might come back to that at some point again.
Yeah, because my comment was also that I got feeling in Estonia we had also sometimes political advisors, but then if the organization is stable working, it's not so much related to the, because what we saw in some countries, I'm not saying what countries exactly, but if the top manager or CIOs were too close to politics, then every new elections, they were changed and it's not sustainable anymore. So some organizations should be sustainable. Yeah.
Well, I think I just make one last comment on this. So I think the key to our thinking in Estonia, at least, is that even if you have some guys like me sort of working on, you know, I guess, you know, in the middle of everybody else, we try not to steal the game, if you get my point. So fundamentally, still, I say, every agency, every department, every minister is in charge of their thing in IT. So, but we see our role as an enablers, to enable them to innovate and move forward, give them the conditions, sometimes give them a kick in the butt if needed, but still exactly make sure that, you know, they move along. And so basically it's all about, you know, again, problem solving for them, to help them.
Okay, now we plan to turn to good experience and exercise from Ukraine. I don't know how good or how complicated it was, but then now just in starting to give the floor to Taras Olinyuk. So I will just, he will speak in Russian, so if you need translation, you have also earphones. But then, for the beginning, I just a few comments. Quite often we faced with a situation, people asking, okay, Estonia is small, Belgium is also small, Azerbaijan is so small. We have also other small countries, like Namibia is small, Singapore is small. And then say, big countries are saying that, okay, it's not relevant for us because we are big. But if you look to the technology side, the complete, like the spectrum of services and basic systems are more or less the same. You need to have much bigger databases maybe, or something more decentralized or more centralized. But the complexity in technical sense is not so much different. But now, one point from my side is that my personal opinion is that the complications are not in technology and systems, but in organization. And that's why big countries like Ukraine and also big other countries have bigger challenge how to manage those processes. I will just give the floor to Taras Olinyuk, and he's first deputy of the State Agency for Electronic Governance in Ukraine. And he can comment also how the changes are in management and processes and all the story from Ukraine. Thank you. Please.
Спасибо. Ну, в первую очередь я хочу поблагодарить организатору за то, что меня еще раз пригласили в Эстонию. Первый раз я в Эстонии был в 2007 году, в прошлом году раз 5. В этом году участвовал в электронных выборах как наблюдатель. Эстония для меня стала родным городом. В 2007 году я представлял Эстонии опыт Киевской городской администрации по электронному правительству. Киев в 3 раза, по количеству населения в 3 раза больше, чем Эстония, и нам было что показать. Мне было сейчас очень легко разговаривать, потому что во вступлении Арвот в принципе рассказал все то, что есть сейчас в Украине. Он сказал, что есть страны, где есть Министерство экономики и управляет электронным правительством. Есть страны, где этим занимаются другие министерства. Есть страны, где этим занимается администрация президента. А Украина – это та страна, где электронным правительством занимаются все. У нас есть заместитель президента, который отвечает за электронное правительство. У нас есть советник премьер-министра по открытым данным, который занимается электронным правительством. У нас есть Министерство экономики, которое отвечает за электронные услуги. У нас есть агентство интеллектуальной собственности, которое отвечает за закупку программного обеспечения лицензионного. У нас есть Министерство юстиции, которое отвечает за электронную цифровую подпись и использование электронного документа, в том числе и отвечает за реестры. У нас есть Министерство региональной политики и жилищно-коммунального государства, которое отвечает за децентрализацию власти и формирует политику в сфере электронного правительства. И, наконец-то, у нас еще есть Национальный банк, который хочет внедрять тоже электронное правительство на базе национальной системы электронных платежей. Есть еще другие министерства, просто это очень долго. И, наконец-то, у нас есть агентство, государственное агентство по вопросам электронного управления, которое я представляю. Вот. Как мы к этому дошли, скажем так, это было с 98 года, я просто рассказываю же о опыте, да. Вот. В 98 году Украина очень серьезно заинтересовалась внедрением информационных технологий. Украина является одной из ведущих стран в сфере инноваций и так дальше. Да. У нас множество программистов работают тоже на зарубеж. В 90-м году приняли закон. Закон называется об национальной программе информатизации. Кстати, этот закон скопировали некоторые страны из Советского Союза тоже. А вот потом, когда увидели наш опыт. Этим законом было, в принципе, расположено все. И координация проектов в органах местного самоуправления, различных министерств. Была введена такая должность, как руководитель национальной программы информатизации, которого должен был назначать президент. Было принято, как проводятся экспертизы проектов, как формируются проекты. Проекты утверждались, была программа, которую должны был утверждать Верховный Совет в течение на 3 года программу. Да? И под этот закон создали тогда Комитет связи и информатизации. Был далекий 98 год. И даже в 99 году приняли один-единственный раз на 3 года национальную программу информатизации. Верховный Совет принял. После этого началось очень серьезное внедрение. В бюджете Украины, в национальном бюджете даже выделялась отдельная строка на национальную программу информатизации. По закону Украины все проекты, любые проекты на закупку любых информационных технологий, которые делаются за любые бюджетные деньги, любым органам, относятся, это еще раз говорю, по закону, относятся к национальной программе информатизации. Входит все в кучу. Но раньше это формировалось единой строчкой в бюджете. Потом так получилось, что подумали, что слишком много денег в одной строчке, а давайте как бы пускай делают это все, а вы только координируете. И с комитета информатизации, который формировал политику и отвечал за реализацию этой политики, был такой орган серьезный, потом решили много полномочий. У нас была реорганизация власти, новая структура кабинета министров. Давайте переведем это в Министерство транспорта и связи. Связь, транспорт, занимается там почта, связь, коммуникации и так дальше. Укртелеком у нас был государственный, это национальный оператор, который обеспечивал связь. Передадим в транспорт и связь. Посмотрели, что-то получается, что-то не получается, новые выборы, 2010 год. Смотрят, нет, транспорт и связи это плохо. И вообще столько полномочий, и связь, и электронная подпись, и информатизация, и все остальное, это слишком много. Давайте что-то будем делать с этим. И передали Министерству юстиции электронную подпись, это было в 2010 году. Создали отдельный орган, который занимается связью. При этом почту оставили в министерстве. С учетом того, что понимали, что информатизация это все-таки наука и инновация, ну, информатизация это инновации, да, все, создали орган под Министерством образования. И у нас Министерство образования с 2010 года занималось информатизацией. Под Министерством образования было создано агентство науки, инноваций, информатизации. И это было, ну, в принципе, ну, это мое мнение, да, то, что они отделяли или принимали как единый термин информатизацию и электронное правительство, и тем более информационное общество, это была огромнейшая ошибка. Потому что информатизация – это информатизация тех или иных органов для обеспечения своей деятельности. Электронное общество и электронное правительство – это совсем другое и намного выше. Оно находится на наиболее высшем уровне. В 2014 году, ну и вот работало агентство при Министерстве образования. При этом за электронные цифровые ключи и что такое электронный документ отвечало Министерство юстиции, связь занималась связью и занималась защитой информации. Да, защита информации у нас в одном органе вместе со связью. Называется государственная администрация специальной связи и защиты информации. То есть защитой информации занимается еще один орган, да. Вот. Это Украина. Вот. И в 2000... Мы очень большая страна, еще раз говорю, да, то есть как бы нам надо попробовать все, чтобы найти лучшее решение. Вот. И в 2014 году, после революции, было принято решение, и с учетом того, что и президент, и партии, и политические лидеры во всех своих выступлениях говорили, что электронное правительство – это основной инструмент по борьбе с коррупцией, и они все поддерживали электронное управление, да? А развитие информационного общества тоже как бы относится и к открытости власти, и возможности влиять людей на свое правительство, то создали агентство электронного управления Украины. Но создали они его каким образом? Это был очень интересный образ, то есть хотели немножко по-другому. Создали его отделением или переименованием того агентства, которое было при Министерстве образования и науки. То есть инновацию и науки убрали, оставили информатизацию и переименовали на агентство электронного управления. И с учетом того, что как бы инновацию и науку убрали, а у нас в то время был вице-премьер-министром Украины Гройсман Владимир Борисович. Он известен в Украине не только как бы как политик, он как мэр, он был мэром Винницы, губернатором Винницы, и он действительно много сделал в плане внедрения электронного самоуправления в Виннице. То есть он мог показать, и он понимал, как важно внедрять электронные услуги, как важно внедрять электронные сервисы в работу органов власти. Вот. Но у него была должность, которая называлась вице-премьер-министр, министр региональной политики и жилищно-коммунального господарства. То есть и жилищно-коммунального хозяйства. Да. Вот. Создалось это агентство в июле месяце, начало работать, потому что как бы достаточно длительный процесс происходит там в положении, изменение других нормативных актов и так дальше. Начало работать в октябре месяце. Вот. И на сегодняшний день агентство перед собой ставит задачи достаточно большие. Ну и вот мы, скажем так, у нас в Украине говорят, маем это еще маем, имеем то, что имеем. Вот, и слава Богу, очень хорошо, что мы в октябре месяце запустили проект или нормативно-правовой акт, который называется «Создание межведомственного совета по электронному правительству Кабинета министров Украины», в который должны входить все министерства и все ведомства, и в положение этого агентства, это опять же тоже по опыту Эстонии, мы же с разных стран берем опыт, вот, и в положении этого агентства как раз и написано об координации при формировании бюджета на выделение денег на создание или поддержку тех или иных информационных систем. То, чего нету. И в чем проблема такого большого количества управленцев таким замечательным делом, как электронное управление? Проблема в том, что невзирая на то, что все чем-то занимаются, у нас есть замечательные проекты и по государственному партнерству, приватному, частному партнерству. Это то, что касается фискальной службы. Еще раз повторюсь, у нас фискальная служба, то есть у нас уже давно, уже много лет назад начали с помощью электронной подписи сдавать электронный отчет. В фискальную службу, в пенсионный фонд, в социальную службу, в соцстрах и так дальше. И что интересно, мы с фискальной службой, я тогда там в другом месте работал, договорились, что фискальная служба откроет интерфейсы, откроет данные, а бизнес будет делать программное обеспечение, ну, для того, чтобы можно было сдавать удобно, да, чтобы можно было удобно сдавать эту отчетность. При этом остается государственное такое же окошечко, да, просто с ним намного сложнее работать. И у нас 3 или 4 компании сейчас предлагают услуги юридическим лицам. Ставишь за деньги, правда, да, ставишь программное обеспечение и сдаешь через эту компанию отчет. Там намного больше сервисов, там намного более оптимизированный интерфейс и так дальше. Но это работает. Это положительный момент. Второй момент был отрицательный государственного и частного партнерства. Но он у нас был. Это создание государственных реестров. Те, которые касаются реестры недвижимого имущества, реестры юридических и физических лиц. А в свое время замечательная компания, с учетом того, что в государстве тогда не оказалось денег, предложила: давайте мы вам поставим софт, программное обеспечение, настроим систему, все остальное будем делать, а вы при этом будете нам платить роялти. Но роялти будете платить не просто там какая-то стоимость, ну так как в Oracle, да, там, а роялти с каждой услуги. И начинаем внедрять этот проект. Все пошло хорошо, красиво, создался проект, но через 3 года, когда поменялось, опять же, руководство, начали смотреть, а сколько ж платит государство роялти за использование вот этого программного обеспечения. И какой процент стоимости от админ-услуги идет на покрытие затрат на роялти. Ну, хочу вам просто сказать, что в Украине стоимость админ-услуги в некоторых услугах, она меньше, чем оплата за банковский перевод этих услуг. Ну, то есть так получается, да. То есть мы тоже в этом. Вот. И получилось, что стоимость за роялти за 3 года была больше в 34 раза, чем стоимость создания этого проекта. Так получилось, да. И решили отказаться от этой схемы. Да? И сказали компании, что компания, мы не будем больше работать на таких условиях. Компания сказала: окей. И с учетом того, что у нее был очень замечательный электронный ключик и авторские права на всю систему недвижимого имущества, регистрации и так дальше, были у компании, государство не имело никаких прав, а только право на использование, система государственного управления на неделю остановилась. Всю регистрацию, все остальное, регистрацию браков, регистрацию юридических лиц, смертности, рождения, целую неделю велась на бумаге. Так получилось. Ну, и опыт у нас. Поэтому мы сейчас решили делать немножко по-другому, да, то есть мы уже сейчас на законодательном уровне готовим законопроект, который будет обязывать при любом создании любого программного обеспечения, даже при каком-либо там частном партнерстве, но авторские права на программное обеспечение должны быть у государства. Это то, что мы пришли. Теперь, в чем был негатив того, что у нас только... 2 минуты, окей. Я же могу разговаривать, вы же знаете, мы же большая страна. Вот. В чем был негатив? В том, что, невзирая на то, что электронным правительством хотят заниматься все, и даже что-то делают, и даже есть очень множество проектов, в Украине на сегодняшний день нет архитектуры электронного правительства. В Украине нет стандартов, классификаторов и так дальше. Вот первый круглый стол был о децентрализации. То более децентрализированной страны, чем Украина, я, наверное, не знаю. Да? Потому что каждый делает все, то, что хочет, без какого-либо управления. Но у нас в KPI, у нас в плане нашего агентства стоит как раз и нормализация вот этой всей сферы. Это то, что мы должны были принять, должны принять в этом году с помощью наших народных депутатов. В Украине в этом созыве создался комитет в Верховном Совете, законодательный комитет по информатизации и связи, вот, и с помощью которых мы намерены и сделать соответствующее законодательство, которое бы дало нам реальную возможность координации этих проектов. И создания проектов, и обязательно условия для создания информационных систем, и обязательства, чтобы эти информационные системы взаимодействовали между собой. На что я хотел еще обратить внимание, то о чем? Это партнерство с нашими замечательными донорами, компаниями и так дальше. Я хочу сказать, что в связи с тем, что агентство было создано в 2014 году, когда уже и шел бюджетный год, то создание агентства по украинскому законодательству не обязательно, что ему дают деньги на то, чтобы оно работало. Поэтому в 2014 году на функционирование агентства было выделено 0 гривен в бюджете. И если бы не наши замечательные доноры и Академия электронного управления Эстония, и USAID, и большая благодарность фонду Сороса, и большая благодарность швейцарскому фонду Да. Вот. Если бы не они, которые как раз позволили нам набрать экспертов, при агентстве создана группа, координационная группа, эксперты, которые сейчас формируют 4 белых книги. На основании этих 4 белых книг и будет формироваться, в принципе, государственная политика в сфере электронного управления. Эти белые книги, на основании этих белых книг как раз и будет разработан план внедрения электронного управления. Будет разработано основное законодательство, и эти белые книги как раз по вопросам электронная идентификация, где мы рассматриваем 4 вида идентификации в зависимости от того, что надо. Это взаимодействие, это архитектура электронного правительства, это электронная демократия. Вот. Поэтому могу сказать такое, не знаю, есть ли разница, где находится агентство, или где находится тот или иной орган, но очень желательно, чтобы он был один. А находится ли он под премьер-министром, это очень было бы хорошо, потому что это показывает для других министерств реальную политическую волю. Находится ли оно под президентом, это можно делать только в президентско-парламентской республике. У нас наоборот, парламентско-президентская. И функции президента четко ограничены Конституцией Украины. Или находится оно под тем или иным министерством, да, очень было бы желательно, чтобы это было министерство, с которым обязательно согласовываются вопросы и финансовые, и юридические. В Украине это Минюст, Минфин и Минэкономики. То есть по закону любое распоряжение, любой нормативный акт, любая помощь извне должна проходить через согласование с этим министерством. Это очень хорошо, но все-таки это главные специалисты, это желание, это люди, которые готовы помогать, и это, опять же, надо показывать работу, и это вера в свое, ну, в то, что ты делаешь. Если это будет, потому что, еще раз говорю, у нас было по-разному, и министерство, и так дальше, не было результата. Очень надеюсь, что этот результат будет у нас.
Thank you, Taras. And this is like a very good message also for everybody that you see that these organizational issues might be very complicated. And the sustainability is so important that to reach this stable status of some coordination unit. And of course, Ukraine especially just had like huge organization, many institutions also influenced from academic field probably strong, and then it was much more complicated than small countries. Okay, we used most of the time already, but then I hope that you have questions from audience. So just yes, starting from here, and just if you can wait, or I can just give you. If you have more microphones.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Fariz Ismailzadeh from Azerbaijan. I'm vice rector of the university. My question to the panel is about this centralized body. Is it ministry or is it at the Prime Minister's office? How can we ensure that this centralized body is at the vanguard, at the front of the innovations? Because usually governmental bodies can have their own limitations. They are bureaucratic, they have financial difficulties, the decision-making process is not so fast. So how can we make sure we as, let's say, non-governmental actors, universities, private sector, how can we make sure that exactly that governmental body is at the front of all innovations, of all latest developments, be it technological or policy-wise? Please, so this is my question.
Thank you. Maybe I will ask, starting from Frank.
Well,
Do you have comments how you innovating things?
For us, being a horizontal ministry and not having the power to impose things, the only way to get credibility is to have the competence in-house. And we are very, very sensitive to it, that we have the highest level of technical competence in-house, which is higher than what the ministries, our customers, have. Once they become more technically savvy, you lose your full credibility. So it's a must. You must have the highest level of technical competence. Where do I get it? Well, we, in our ministry, 2/3 of our staff comes from private sector. We had trouble finding the competences in-house, so then there is no other option. You need to find them on the other side. But still, we need to keep on being up to date, so we work a lot with academia together. We work a lot with private companies together who are specialized in one or the other domain, just to keep at that highest level possible. There's no miracle.
Yes, I think also it has been partly salary issues. At least in Estonia, in the beginning, we were just not able just to find a very high level technical or competence in this field, and then we had problem. But I think that it might be also still a problem in some like Eastern Partnership countries. Maybe another related issue was that we had also discussion in Estonia. Sim can comment also, but it's dealing with public procurement, because public procurement law is usually saying that you have to choose the cheapest version, and sometimes it's the oldest. Doesn't matter what's the technology. So it's also related to this. But please.
One comment to that. I think the UK has a good example, because what UK government does, they have a kind of application store. So this is like an Apple store or the Android market for government agencies and for municipalities as well. It's a partially on government-owned data center, partially external, like cloud services from external parties. To get to this store, you have to go through a certification process with pricing, terms and conditions, legal discussion, etc. And then if you are a government agency or municipality, you can use services from that store. And then the vendors keep offering new and new solutions to that. So there is an innovation going on. It's not necessary that the government agency who runs that store must come up with new ideas, right? They do that as well, but also vendors like Oracle, like Microsoft and others, local software companies offering new and new services. Government agency certifies them and they get on the store. So it's a good source of continuous innovation using the vendors on the market.
Okay, and Sim has.
I think I'll just, well, basically iterate a lot what you guys have said already, but I would say it's a threefold sort of equation. People, which was Frank's point. Yeah, I mean, getting the right people in to reach, can drive the game. And they don't have to be, I would say, necessarily, at least on a policy level, the best tech guys, right? But really people who can relate technology to, how the changing government and sort of policy and society works. Secondly, it's exactly like you said as well, a lot about this, constant dialogue with the other bright minds out there in the private sector, academy, so forth. And I think this works both ways. You get new ideas in, but also works as a sort of push and pressure to keep you sort of thinking forward all the time, right? So it's a bit like, a transparency, got a quality check on you. And the third thing, if I can say this, but this is again very much related to what I was saying about Estonia beforehand, but it also helps, let's say, if you have a bit more people thinking from the whole of government point of view. But also, exactly, it's like it's perhaps a luxury to have, but still somebody else is also, being able to bring new ideas on board and push others to do more.
You have comment from Azerbaijan? No? You want?
The question was from Azerbaijan delegation. Maybe a little bit confused for me, but
Difficult answer.
I won't describe our situation. I think today on this panel we have the right answer to this question. This is practice of Ukraine. What we cannot do for the regulation coordinating this process. If a government appointed somebody, governmental body for the coordinating, I think this body has potential for this, capacity for this, as mentioned by my colleague from Belgium. We not try to be political player on this field. We are mostly as technical ministries, we drive technically this policy, but in our country, mainly the state policy adopted by president, by cabinet of ministry, whereas executive body, we only implement this policy. We involve into this process when develop this policy, but we're not fully responsible for the adopting this. This was adopted by head of state, head of our government, and therefore I think in our case, Azerbaijan exists the right model for the regulation, this coordinating this sphere, when the Minister of Communication and Information Technologies and now Minister of High Technology show own potential for the attracting new ideas and collect around him the all stakeholder on this process, and we show our willingness. We can drive this process. Today our ministry operator of such system as PKI in our country, e-government portal, where initiated project, open data project, which will stimulate our startups and our private companies for the developing new applications. We push it process to the mobile government, and this is show our potential, our willingness to develop the government, the e-governance in our country, and therefore I think that our practice can be served as model for the other countries too.
Maybe I have also one comment, because actually it was one question from my side prepared, but I'm not asking it more. It's a question now, how close to the academic you should go? Is it like we had, like my personal experience is that from one side it's very important to get academic view and studies and all this relevant information. But it's a little bit dangerous to give the task to university because they are starting to go to this academic interests later on. So we felt that it's a very good balance between academic knowledge and public administration. Uses those things which are important, but not give all the tasks to academy because it's even I'm from academy now, but then just it's not academic question to establish the electronic code. Yes, we have some more question, please.
Hello. Hello. Okay, I'm Hannes from Estonia, and just a question from maybe from the previous panel about Singapore and what we are discussing here. We are discussing how to put IT governance or e-governance to the hierarchical governance model. Maybe it's outdated. Maybe we should put it in a whole of a government system like in Singapore, where different ministries will coordinate this theme. So my question to the panel, to the representatives of the countries, also Estonia, is what do you think about the idea of putting the agency for responsible for the e-governance implementation or orchestrating the e-governance, having it under different ministries? For example, the technological part for the Ministry of Communications, the financial part of the Ministry of Finance, and the legal part of the Ministry of Justice. Should this be a better model and be not part of this hierarchical, maybe outdated model of a society?
Okay, thank you. And I think that we can start from, because from Ukraine, the answer was partly made already, but maybe you want us to comment.
Да, ну, как я говорил о том, что в Украине действует эта модель, да, у нас Министерство юстиции занимается одним, экономика другим, администрация президента третьим. Тут можно говорить о том, что в принципе, если вы хотите, если тот или иной орган, да, хочет не только внедрять или получать результаты, но и хочет там больше полномочий, власти и так дальше, да, то надо создавать министерство, ведомство и так дальше. Если вы хотите работать и вы хотите действительно показывать результаты, то вы должны идти и, ну, договариваться с теми или иными министерствами. Да. В любом случае мы создаем как раз межведомственный совет в Украине для того, чтобы договариваться. И туда будут ходить все министерства и ведомства. Работать просто агентство, которое только реализует политику, да, очень сложно. Потому что приходится доказывать, потому что приходится постоянно очень много надо тратить времени. Но реально.
Thank you, and actually, yes, I think that one comment is also that the complications are in complicated public administrations mainly. The theme has.
Well, I start by saying that I think if the need is really to get digital government on the top of agenda and make things go fast, it's a very lucrative model to use that Hannes proposed, basically, right? Although I think the Singapore model is even further, right? Singapore basically operates one big IT agency that actually also operates as IT agencies of all other departments, right? So it's actually a complete other side of the things. And I mean, like I said before, I think there's one aspect still in order to, well, we are not just talking about digital government or governance, we're talking about how to change governance with digital, right? So in that sense, I don't think you can fully escape the regular sort of governance model, which I was basically trying to say beforehand. So, and you asked about, let's say, what would be my view on Estonia. My personal view would be this, that perhaps, you know, in our case, in Estonian case, we should not be creating like an agency for digital government, but rather exactly work, you know, single sort of coherent unit on public administration and governance overall, out of which digital development is one aspect, how to change the government. But again, it's an ideal world. Until then, we're happy to exactly at least keep working with the structures we have.
Okay, we used all our time already, but then maybe just short comments from your side.
A few words about our practice. In Azerbaijan, usually for the implementation such big project, maybe such big activity, specially prepared adopted state programs, which before adopting passed to the relevant bodies, relevant government structures after taking opinion and after agreeing with him in this process. This state program adopted by state of our head of our state, and after that the financing and legal issue and others done according to this state program. I think this approach, this is good approach when all structure involved firstly to the preparation process, where each project which intent was included to this project, to this state program, passed through expertise and others. And after that, after adopting this state program, this project implemented in country. And second one, according to the existing practice, on level of our ministry, we have coordination council where we collect all coordinator, all CEOs for the implementing this state program. We have very usually discuss what going this process and other. If we have some questions, difficulties, we address it to the relevant bodies for the solving this problem. And therefore, I think such practice very effective and very useful for our activity.
Yeah, Mark?
Well, if I look around the world and I see and observe some countries, yes, of course, if you have the top-down Prime Minister's office support, you can move much faster. That's true. A nice example is Portugal, for instance. With the former Prime Minister, they went very fast forward. Whether you have one agency or more agencies, for me, that's not so much important. I think the most important thing is that you have a clear mandate with a clear budget and a clear to-do list. Yeah, if that is vague, then you don't move forward. If it is clear and fully detailed, then you can just go steam ahead. So that would be much more, make a contract from the start and make it clear so that everybody knows and understands in the same way what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And for me, that's the best way to progress.
Would you like to comment or say a few words?
No, I fully agree with
what
was said. Singapore was mentioned a couple of times. The other good example is, I think, Dubai, the Emirates of Dubai. Of course, they have a very strong financial background, I would say. But if you have time, check how they did the system. It's amazing. Other than the money itself, that of course they had a huge budget, but the way they had a vision and then broke it down into steps, etc. That's a remarkable story. And one more thing, let me just mention because we discussed a lot about there should be IT should be driven by the needs of different ministries, by the public agenda reform, etc. Let me just throw as a last word on the crowd the other way around. Just keep in mind there are new technologies coming up which are changing basically the life, like mobile technology, smartphones, social networking. Those are changing the life of the citizens, and they would want to use the same technologies when they talk to the municipalities, when they talk to the government, talk to the political parties. So keep in mind that that's a little bit the other way around. So it's not like there is so it's like there is a technology and everybody is using it, and the government, if the government is not using it, it's losing some of the credibility. So there is a technological driven change as well, what's happening, which has to fit into the picture what we discussed.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a very nice discussion today. And I think that it's one of my most interesting topic. I try to talk everywhere. And maybe the last message from my side is that I catch the message also from yours that it's important that somebody is taking care of this coordination. The tasks are clearly defined and responsibilities also, and then sustainability. Just to have more time just to implement something. So let's make applause to our presenters.